Most people imagine manipulation as loud and obvious, a shove in a crowded room. The truth is quieter and far more common. It slips in as a question that feels polite, even caring, and by the time you answer, you have already given away the ground you meant to defend. Here is a claim you can test in your own life by sunset. If you learn to meet loaded questions with a stoic mind, calm, precise, anchored, you will recover hours of peace each week and make better decisions under pressure. Keep listening, because before we finish, I will give you a single sentence you can use in nearly any conversation to clear the fog and bring the discussion back to reality. I will hold that line until the moment you can truly wield it. What follows is philosophy for working people, not museum pieces. I'm not offering therapy, legal counsel, or personalized advice. I'm a fellow student of the Stoics, translating old tools for modern rooms, offices with fluorescent lights, living rooms with quiet tension, group chats where meaning buckles under speed. Use these ideas as lenses. Try them. Keep what proves itself. And consult qualified help for your specific situation. Philosophy, practiced well, refuses melodrama and promises only clarity. And clarity is enough to change a life. The ancients noticed something we forget in the digital chorus. Questions steer reality because they steer attention. A question sets the frame, and frames shape what counts as evidence, what counts as kindness, even what counts as sanity. When a manipulator wants to move you without appearing to touch you, they don't start with an insult. They start with a prompt that makes you volunteer your footing. Why are you so sensitive? You trust me, right? Are you accusing me? Would I ever lie to you? Can't we just move on? In every case, the words sound benign. The structure is not. The question drags the discussion away from evidence and toward your character, away from the present and toward your guilt, away from shared reality and into your head. The Stoic counters not with volume, but with a return to what is solid, what is observed, what is testable, what is within your say-so. Before we turn to 5 common traps and the posture that disarms them, we should clean our lens. Stoicism is not cynicism in Roman dress, nor is it stiff upper lip cosplay. It is a training program for the inner life, so that your judgments track reality, your choices follow what is good, and your emotions flow from those judgments rather than whip you around like a sail torn by the wind. Epictetus, whose lectures were written down by a student with ink-stained fingers rather than a court scribe, begins at the hinge. There are things within our control, our judgments, intentions, attention, the use of our mind, and things beyond it, other people's choices, our reputation once it leaves our hands, the weather, the roll of fortune. Marcus Aurelius, a man with entire legions and still no control over a fever, reminds himself that if someone shows him clearly he is mistaken, he must change because the aim is truth, not winning. Seneca warns how fear and imagination can collaborate to make phantoms that hurt more than facts. Bring those 3 to the room, and suddenly the floor meets your feet again. Consider the first trap, familiar to anyone who has raised a concern and then been told the real problem is their sensitivity. It works because it converts your attention from, "Is the pattern I noticed real?" to, "What's wrong with me for noticing?" A crude carpenter does this by hammering your identity. A clever one does it with velvet. "I worry you're overreacting. You're such a deep feeler. Maybe you misheard." The Stoic answer is not defensiveness, but classification. Notice the order: observation, interpretation, and then feeling. What did you observe? What did you conclude? What emotion followed? When the order blurs, manipulation wins. When the order is restored, you regain choice. You don't have to announce this process aloud. You can do it in a breath. I heard X at 9:17 p.m. The conclusion that I'm drawing is Y. The feeling arising is Z. Now you can say with a level voice, I'm pointing to an observable pattern. If I'm mistaken, walk me through the facts. You have shifted the conversation from your temperament to the track of evidence. Stoically speaking, you just refused to litigate your essence and insisted on examining impressions. This becomes concrete when we watch Maria, a composite of many professionals I've known. Mid-career, meticulous, she worked in operations at a mid-sized firm that cherished buzzwords about transparency while tolerating a different reality. She noticed small numbers that didn't balance, not smoking gun stuff, more like hairline fractures that a trained eye respects. When she raised it, the first replies were affectionate pats disguised as feedback. You're a perfectionist. The market moves too fast for that level of detail. Don't take everything so personally. It almost worked. She began to wander into self-doubt, and that is the terrain manipulators try to cultivate, not because they love your suffering, but because questioning yourself is cheaper than questioning them. Maria took a weekend with a legal pad in a coffee shop. She listed observations on the left, interpretations in the middle, and feelings on the right. It was not heroic, it was grammatical. With that separation made, she returned with records and questions about procedures rather than motives. The meeting grew tense, as such meetings do, but facts have a habit of belonging to no one and accusing no one until they're ignored. A month later, an external review found what she had seen. Was she sensitive? In the sense of a well-tuned instrument, yes. The violin that screeches at the slightest scrape also makes the hall sing. The point is not to dull the ear, but to tune it and then ask for corroboration. A second trap is the demand for trust instead of the practice of trustworthiness. The sentence usually leans on intimacy. You trust me, right? It succeeds because humans are wired to belong, and most of us would rather be thought loyal than be seen as careful. Stoicism doesn't scold this desire, it gives it rails. Trust in the Stoic frame is a habit of evidence, the cumulative weight of consistent actions aligned with what is promised. Sailors don't trust a rope because it says marine grade on the package. They trust it after hauling it through storm and salt. In the same way, a partner who asks you to trust them while hiding the data is asking you to replace reality with allegiance. In personal life, people do this by putting your identity on trial. If you loved me, you wouldn't ask. Asking means you're toxic. Good partners trust blindly. In business life, it shows up as slogans. We're family here. Don't slow us down with process. Epictetus would shake his head and point back to controllables. Your role is to examine impressions before assent, not after damage. In practice, that means you can reply with calm clarity. I trust patterns more than pledges. Help me see the pattern. The answer you get back will tell you everything. People who mean well will show their work like a math student who knows the proof. Those who want the halo without the heat will turn to pressure. The third trap is the burden flip. Are you accusing me? The brilliance of this question is that it transfers the role of examiner to the role of transgressor. You no longer explore what happened. You defend your audacity at exploring. Marcus speaks about refusing to be yanked by someone else's anger, like a puppet string. You practice that here by letting the line fly past you. Silence is not surrender when it is chosen. It is a refusal to switch chords. A measured pause, count the length of a long exhale, restores agency. Then you can ask the clarifying counter question that returns the ball to the original chord. Should I be? That is not sarcasm. It is a request for reasons. If answers come with dates, policies, logs, you're in conversation. If answers come as theater or threats, you have learned what you need without saying much at all. It is not your task to prosecute another human. It is your task to seek truth about shared reality, so you can act rightly within your sphere. Let me tell you about Kai, a young manager in a growing company. He inherited a team with a charismatic top seller named Dan, who made the numbers sing and the rules bend. Expenses came in late, receipts came in smudged, and when asked for clarification, Dan's warmth cooled into offense. "Are you accusing me?" It was a perfect gambit for an environment that prized revenue more than rigor, and Kai was new enough to doubt himself. One afternoon, after an especially frustrating exchange, Kai took a walk. He remembered reading that Stoic composure is not detachment from care, but attachment to what you can steer. He drafted a small script, not to weaponize, but to keep his mind in the boat. "I'm not accusing you. I'm asking for the documentation our policy requires. If there's an error in our process, help me fix it. If there's an exception we should formalize, persuade me with reasons." He rehearsed it aloud until it lost its heat. The next meeting, when Dan launched the familiar flare, Kai didn't rise to swat it. He let it burn out. He repeated his script and then stopped. The air thinned. Offense gave way to the one thing manipulation cannot endure, a request for accountable detail. Kai wasn't heroic. He was stubborn about reality. Over time, the team culture drifted from celebrity to standard. The numbers did not collapse. They became more honest, which is another way of saying more useful. The fourth trap is the innocence performance, a pained question meant to make you ashamed for holding a doubt. Would I ever lie to you? The aim here is to move the conversation out of evidence and into theater. You are invited to soothe the other, rather than examine the claim. Seneca would recognize this as a displacement of the moral center. It's easier to charm than to correct. The Stoic bright line is simple to say and sometimes hard to hold. Honesty never fears inspection. A friend of truth prefers a lit room even when it reveals dust. So when someone asks if they could ever deceive you, the pertinent issue is different. Would you know if they did? What safeguards? What double checks? What shared dashboards exist that make deception expensive and truth cheap? In love, this might be routines and clarity about privacy versus secrecy. In work, it might be audits that don't require suspicion to be justified. Your tone matters because gravity without aggression is a rare and powerful combination. If they hear contempt, you have handed them a reason to pivot away from substance. If they hear steadiness, you invite the only loyalty worth the name, loyalty to reality. Our delayed awakening story lives here. Mira, a teacher in a large city, fell for Tom, who was funny in the exact way her family was not. Early concerns about vanishing weekends and muted phones turned into jokes about her inner detective. He asked more than once if she really believed he could mislead her. She was embarrassed by the fear and mediated it by rationalizing. Months turned into seasons. A chance message from an old friend to whom she told the full story became the cold splash she needed. Not an accusation, just a question. What would count as reassurance if words weren't allowed? It was a Stoic question dressed in plain clothes. To her credit, Mira didn't explode. She designed a small experiment with Tom, shared calendars, an agreed location unknown window for surprise plans that was short, not eternal, and a habit of answering, "What did you do today?" with details that made sense to an outside observer. The change in Tom's posture told the tale. He was affectionate but slippery, lots of promises, few specifics. The point of the story is not that he was a villain. Human beings are mixed. The point is that Mira's awakening was delayed until she moved from soothing to seeing, from stories to structure. Freedom returned the day she placed her contentment on something firmer than tone. The final trap is the exhaustion plea. Can't we just move on? This question is not always manipulative. Healthy people use it after genuine repair, but manipulators use it as a fire blanket to smother the last glowing ember of accountability. The Stoic response is paced, not punitive. Time is not a solvent. Truth is, moving forward is not an act of speed, but of repair. In architecture, you do not build a second story on a warped joist and hope for the best. You straighten or replace the beam. In sailing, you do not point the boat where you wish and pray. You trim, tack, and only then reach. Move on becomes wise the day the structure beneath can bear weight. You can say so in words that are neither cruel nor soft. I'm ready to leave this behind when we both understand what failed and how we'll keep it from failing again. If that sentence makes the other sigh with relief, you are in one kind of story. If it makes them flare with anger, you are in another. Both kinds teach. A preventable downfall illustrates the cost of skipping this step. A regional charity launched a program with heart and haste. A volunteer named Pete handled procurement and did it with improvisational flair. Questions about bidding and receipts were deferred with the mantra, "We don't have time for bureaucracy." The team moved on after each hiccup, always forward, rarely downward into process. A year later, they discovered that moving on had built a house of cards. The program was good. The practices were not. Donors were kind, but not oblivious. Everything that followed, apologies, rebuilds, the slow return of trust, would have been shortened had someone insisted on the patient, unglamorous work of repair before the next sprint. The Stoic lesson is dry and life-saving. Reality is a stern but fair partner. It does not bend to your narrative. It collaborates with accuracy. Underneath all 5 patterns, there is the same lever, pace. Manipulators win when they control the tempo of your mind. They rush you to answer to their framing. They stall when inspection nears. They pick up the tempo when guilt is useful. They slow it when your fatigue is too. The Stoic disciplines attention to impressions, assent only after examination, purposeful speech, and chosen silence are metronomes that keep you from being dragged by another person's rhythm. You will be tempted to fight slogans with slogans. Don't. Use verbs. Ask for what can be shown. Now we must address a common confusion that robs people of good tools. Stoicism is not the absence of feeling. It is a training in the right ordering of feeling. The Stoics do not ask you to become stone. They ask you to become a person whose emotions are aligned with judgments that are aligned with reality. If your anger is based on a misperception, it is a misfire. If your grief is based on an accurate recognition of loss, it is not only permitted, it is human. The discipline is to separate the spark, impression, from the flame, ascent, just long enough to decide whether to add air. When you master that small delay, you regain what modern life tries to steal: choice under pressure. The pause does not dull your life, it sharpens it. Listen again to the echo of the opening line, "Questions shape rooms." To become unshakable is not to become inflexible. It is to become anchored. You can survive difficult talk without becoming a difficult person. The method is humble. Start by honoring the difference between observation and interpretation. In a heated exchange, write a private note: the observable moment. A door closed, a message not returned during agreed hours. A report missing a signature. Then your interpretation: I believe this means X. Then your feeling: I'm uneasy, disappointed, angry. When you speak from that order, the fog lifts. You might still be wrong about the middle column. You are not wrong about the first or the third. Disagreement can now do something besides wound. Bring in another pillar: correction as a gift. Marcus reminds himself to welcome correction with gratitude because the goal is not to defend a reputation, but to improve a soul. Apply that to manipulation. If you are wrong, a fair counter-argument is a win. It rescues you from error. If you are right and the other can't meet you in the light, that too is knowledge. Either way, you move closer to what is real, which is the only direction worth walking. We can make the Stoic posture even more tactile with an analogy from training. In the gym, you do not grow by adding reckless weight. You grow by adding deliberate resistance under control. The mind is a body that gets stronger by handling the right load at the right tempo. Loaded questions are like sloppy, bouncing reps that look impressive and do little. Your job is to slow the movement, feel the path, set the shoulders, then lift. In conversation, that means clarify the claim, ask for the evidence, match your tone to your aim. Do not try to save face and find truth at the same time. Pick truth and face will follow. A recurring objection deserves attention. What if insisting on evidence is itself unkind? Stoicism does not bless cruelty, it blends clarity with charity. You can say, I want to believe you, and the way I do that is by understanding the facts. The conjunction matters. Kindness without reality is indulgence. Reality without kindness becomes a cudgel. Together, they form the only posture that scales across family rooms and boardrooms, a spine that bends where it should and holds where it must. Perhaps you recognize yourself not in the target of manipulation, but in the one who has used these questions from insecurity rather than malice. Many of us have said, can't we just move on because we were ashamed? Many of us have asked, do you trust me? Because we were tired of feeling doubted. Stoicism offers mercy here too. You can apologize not for your existence, but for your tactic. You can say, I tried to speed past the hard part. Let's go back. Dignity is not found in never erring. It is found in correcting course without theatrics. The same single sentence you will soon learn will help you correct yourself, and that is part of why I have waited to give it to you. A tool that cuts others also needs to trim our own excess. Now we return to the promise at the beginning. You wanted one sentence that can bring almost any charged conversation out of mist and into daylight. Its usefulness lies not in magic, but in the way it re-anchors the room in the Stoic order of control and evidence. Speak it with a calm breath and an even face. Tell me what I could observe that would make a fair-minded outsider agree with you. And if I'm wrong, show me where my perception or reasoning broke. The first half demands observable, verifiable anchors. The second half invites correction without humiliation. Together, they do what the ancient handbooks train. They cleanse impressions and train assent. You will be tempted to make it sharper, to add barbs. Resist the ego's small delight. The sentence is powerful because it honors truth over triumph. Let's close our story arcs so your mind leaves full rather than jangling. Maria avoided a scandal not by making a scene but by making a list, and her sensitivity turned out to be a finely tuned instrument when played through the amplifier of facts. Kai kept his posture when the burden was flipped and built a team where process protected both revenue and respect. Mira, slow to awaken, finally moved the conversation from theater to transparency and used the pain to learn a habit she will not unlearn. The charity that wanted to move on has since rebuilt with public dashboards and a bias for documentation. It helps fewer people per week than it dreamed, but helps them longer. The common thread is not genius. It is fidelity to reality. If you carry only a handful of reminders into your week, let them be brief and humane. Questions can be instruments or traps. Learn to hear the difference by the way they either invite observation or demand a verdict about your character. Trust is a rope braided over time. Words claim, patterns prove. Silence is not defeat when chosen. It is a lever that shifts the frame back to what can be known. Moving on is an act of repair, not a sprint. And the breath you take between impression and assent is the hinge on which your day turns. Stoic practice is deliberately ordinary. You will not glow, you will see. You will not float above life, you will stand in it. There will be afternoons when you forget and answer a loaded question on its own terms and feel the familiar slide into self-defense. Do not add a second arrow to the first by condemning yourself. Reset. The next time someone asks for blind trust, ask for a shared view. The next time someone asks if you're accusing them, ask if you should be, and wait. The next time someone asks you to move on, anchor the pace to repair. And when it is you using the shortcut, catch yourself with kindness and walk back. In a world that trains us to react, your refusal to be accelerated or stalled by someone else's rhythm will look like rebellion. It is. It is a rebellion for reality and for your own soul. The person who cannot be rushed into assent and cannot be shamed out of observation is not hard. They are free. People will mistake your calm for coldness until they notice that your calm makes space for truth. And truth, even when severe, is a kind friend. If you need a talisman for your pocket, keep the single sentence we named. Use it sparingly, like a compass in a forest, not like a club in a crowd. It points to north. You still have to walk. I would be remiss if I didn't leave you a path to keep walking. Today we trained for loaded questions. The next chapter is how to hold a difficult conversation when you're the one who erred, and you want to repair without self-flagellation or evasion. The same Stoic tools will meet you there: attention, assent, speech, silence. But the shape is different. If this episode gave you something you can test by tonight, come with me into that next room. We will not shout, we will not posture, we will build. And as you practice, you will find that the person who once felt like a pawn on someone else's board begins to play a different game entirely, not domination, not retreat, but steady action, aligned with what is real and what is good.